Hello and welcome to episode number 46 of Chel Squared. I'm your host, Andrew Chelney, and as per usual, we've got a ton to talk about today. Before we get into it here, same spiel every week, but the importance, as always, at a very high level. Please follow the podcast on Twitter at Chel Squared and on Facebook at Chel Squared for more hot takes, news about featured guests, poll questions, and a whole lot more. If you want to follow my personal Twitter, it's at Chelney Andrew. Please rate the show if you enjoy listening. It means more to me than I can put into words. And as an incentive, I will give you a shout out on social media and on the podcast if you do so. And every time you like the show on SoundCloud, give it a rating on Apple Podcasts, follow it on Spotify, etc. A puppy gets a hug from its owner. I don't make the rules here, just making sure you are in the know. If you prefer listening to podcasts on YouTube, search Chel Squared Podcast, and the show is there too. The show is everywhere from Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and every other platform you enjoy listening to podcasts on. If Chel Squared isn't on your preferred platform, shoot me a tweet or a DM, and I will put it on there. Though I am a SiriusXM employee, this podcast is not affiliated in any way with the company. The opinions expressed in this podcast are mine and mine alone and do not necessarily reflect the views of SiriusXM. If you're angry at my takes, direct them to me and me alone, please and thank you. Round 2, the playoffs in full swing. Couple of game fours tonight. Bruins, Jackets, and then Sharks, Avs afterwards. In sort of stunning fashion, the Jackets and the Sharks lead their series 2-1. Bobrovsky playing out of his mind for Columbus, and the Sharks have seemingly figured it out as well. We'll talk how the Sharks are proving me wrong one game at a time. Also, Canes went up a commanding 3-0 lead on the Islanders last night, and Dallas even the series at 2 games apiece. The Stars seemingly have figured out Jordan Binghamton out. I'm going to accidentally call him Binghamton until the end of time. And for that, I apologize. Listen, I lived in Syracuse for 3.5 years of my life, and we had to learn how to pronounce Skinny Atlas correctly, which is not how it's spelt. Skinny Atlas is not spelled Skinny Atlas. Let me tell you that right now. And we also had to know the surrounding area as well, so sorry, but I might, and I probably will, keep calling Jordan Binghamton. I'm sorry, but his last name sounds all too familiar, too similar to a city. I'm trying. I'm giving it my all, giving it the old college try here. I'm trying. I'm sorry. Anyway, Martin Jones has been shutting me up since Game 7 of the Vegas series. His numbers have been great since then. He's looked comfortable, and it's no surprise the Sharks, with Jones leading the way in the net, are up 2-1 on the Avs. Can he continue to be this good? We'll discuss that. Also, how about Curtis McElhinney, oldest goaltender to win his first career NHL playoff start at 35 years and 343 days, 37 days older than Les Binkley, who did it on April 8th, 1970, tidbit courtesy of Sportsnet Stats. Mrazek goes down after coming across the crease. Your heart drops as the starting goaltender for your team exits the game, only to be saved by the journeyman for the rest of Game 2, and now Game 3. What a story that is Curtis McElhinney. We'll get into all that, the poll question, and a whole lot more. Returning to the show is Teal Town USA host and blogger Erik Kuhre. Erik, how are you? Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, Andrew. Great to be back.
Erik, before we get into the super nitty-gritty here, what's the feeling like down in San Jose right now? What's the sense you're getting from the fans, the media, and the city of San Jose?
Fans for the Sharks are very excited right now. Coming off of that Game 7, coming back in a series they thought they were done for after Game 5. It's very, very psyched up in the Bay Area. Media-wise, they are finally getting a little more love than they usually have been. Of course, out here it's all Warriors, but there's now a sprinkling of Sharks, and it's kind of been a little bit more relieving to hear on the local sports talk shows. But it's been a slow get. We'll put it at that.
And do you think that it'll be, I mean, obviously if the Sharks advance and then the Sharks are going to get more publicity in the media and otherwise, but do you think that they'll ever kind of compete more so with the Warriors for airtime? Or, I mean, obviously the Warriors are the Golden State Warriors here, right? This is still one of the best teams to ever play the sport of basketball, and we've seen that over the past few years with their star power. But the Sharks are right there with them, right? Both teams right now are in round 2. Both teams are leading the series for their respective sports here. So, but obviously the Warriors are bigger than the Sharks are. But for the Sharks fans, this is huge. You came back from a 3-1 deficit. You forced Game 7. You were down 3-0, as I'm sure you know better than I do. I'm sure you watched Game 7 no less than 1,000 times by now. You were down 3-0. You got that 5-minute power play, which we could argue shouldn't have been 5 minutes. We could discuss that, all day, every day until the end of time. But the fact remains that it was a 5-minute power play, and you converted on 4 power play goals during that 5-minute time. Which, I mean, if you look at the power play in this series and you think, where did that power play go? Can we get that power play back from round 1? Because the power play in round 2 hasn't been terrific. But you somehow scored 4 goals. Vegas collapsed, and you went on to win that series. And now you're up 2-1 against the Avs here. What's been the biggest key to the 2 out of the 3 games so far? You coming out on top
against Colorado? It's been every guy has been stepping up. There's been like one unique guy. In Game 3, we saw Logan Couture with a hat trick. And he even said, I think it was either after Game 2 and then the morning of Game 3, that he needed to play better. And there's just something about Logan Couture in the playoffs that's just something special. I mean, I think since he played in the 2010 playoffs, only Alexander Ovechkin has more goals than him. I think Ovi has 50, and then Couture with his hat trick, I think, got up to 43 now. So in the decade of the 2010s, I mean, that's phenomenal work. And unfortunately, he doesn't have the hardware to show it. But to be surpassing guys like Crosby, Patrick Kane in that limelight to show how he is. I mean, sometimes we call him Clutcher because he just seems to be clutch. I mean, you talk about Game 7, and I was fortunate to go to that game, and one of probably the loudest I've ever heard the Shark Tank. To see him get 2 goals in that 5-minute power play and just be that leader. I mean, after the first goal, you read his lips. That's one. They felt that they can do something special, and Logan Couture is that special of a player. I mean, granted, he's not out on the East Coast. He doesn't get as much airtime because of the late start, but he is something special. And there's a reason why General Manager Doug Wilson signed into a long-term deal to keep that special player in Teal.
He leads the Sharks with 12 points in 10 games so far. Brent Burns not far behind with 11 points as well. What have you seen from the blue line for San Jose in this postseason? Obviously, we all know it's not a secret at all that Erik Karlsson is extremely hurt. He's not nearly at 100%. I don't even think he's near 75%. I mean, he is laboring very, very, very hard, and he's doing a very bad job at hiding it if he is trying to hide it, which I would assume that Karlsson would try to do because obviously he's a star player, and when a star player is hurt, teams tend to pick up on that and try to attack him directly. But so far, he's seen better days on the ice, but it's not like he's been abysmal over the past few games. He has 10 assists, which is the second highest assist total in the playoffs behind Jacob Slavin. We were talking about this right before I started the show, that the top 6 assist getters in the NHL postseason are all defensemen. You have Jacob Slavin with 11 assists, Karlsson with 10, Pietrangelo with 8, Tyson Barrie with 7, Shea Theodore with 7, and Brent Burns with 7. Jamie Benn leads all forwards with assists with 7. So defensemen leading the way for offense right now. How surprising is that to you?
Bobby Orr is like, can I get the skates back on at this rate? Because this seems like to be, this is the way to go. Offensive defensemen are doing unbelievable work. I mean, Slavin has been a huge key cognate for the Hurricanes, and unbelievable what they've been doing. EK65, I mean, to be in labor, and he's had ups and downs with his lower body injury.
Yeah.
To 10 assists is unfathomable. To be not as mobile. Brent Burns, you talk about a guy who's just been lighting it up in this round. He has 7 points in the 3 games, and he didn't have any in game 3. But that's the thing with the Sharks, is that there's been another player or another line that stepped up. There was one time it was LeBanc, Sorensen, and Joe Thornton line helping out. Then the next night it was the Tomas Hertl line with Nyquist and Kane. And then the other night we call it the Peter DeBoer line blender. I mean, he blends up more lines than smoothies at Jamba Juice, for crying out loud times. And it could be Logan Couture, or Timo Meyer. The Sharks' depth, that's what they are really boasting about right now, with their depth and how you can get anybody to do special things. Prime example, Barclay Goodrow. He only had 2 shifts in that overtime game in game 7, and he's got enough energy to get past, the defense and Marc-Andre Fleury for a game-winning goal. And he's rarely getting any ice time in the third period, let alone, overtime. So it goes to the credit to depth, but you also have your star players being your star players and the hunger to win that cup.
I want to bring this back to the goaltending really quickly. And before the playoffs, right, I said the Knights are going to sweep Martin Jones. I don't believe in his goaltending abilities in the playoffs. We've seen it time and time again where come big moments, he doesn't tend to show up, and therefore the other team will win. And I said it after the Vegas Golden Knights were up 3-1 in the series, that I said, okay, the Knights are taking game 5 or game 6. The Knights are taking the series. It's over. Martin Jones can't do it. And Martin Jones apparently heard what I said, because he stepped up big time en route to the series win for San Jose. And in the last 5 games, right, Martin Jones in game 6 against Vegas, .983 save percentage, 58 saves on 59 shots. In the game 7, 34 saves on 38 shots. He got 4 goals. They weren't all great, but they got out of it fine. Game 1 against Colorado, .929 save percentage. In the loss against Colorado in game 2, .903 save percentage, but still he was pretty solid for the majority of that game. And then in game 3, .926 save percentage, 25 saves on 27 shots. I mean, Martin Jones I don't know if he's an avid listener of the show or what's going on here, but he has listened to my biggest complaints about his game. And he has listened to everything that not only, that I've said, that a lot of people have said about his game and the way and his approach and the team's approach and all of that. And he has channeled everything that has been said. And he has been spectacular for the most part in these past 5, 6 or so games that the San Jose Sharks have played. And I've been proven wrong, at least so far. I don't want to say, at least right now, that he's going to continue to play this well every single game for the rest of the playoffs. I still hold, I'm still not sold on Martin Jones having an .893 or a .930 save percentage every game. But if he continues at least at this pace, the Sharks have a much better shot of winning games and series than if he were to play like he did in the first couple of games of that Vegas series.
He's been a breath of fresh air. And I think it kind of got out of his head a little bit, mainly because he had, I think it was like 7 of 15 times he played Vegas. And my numbers aren't coming to me, but it was like nearly half the games he had played against Vegas after game 4, he had been pulled from. So I think there was a little psychological issue going on there, and I think he was kind of getting out of his head. And I believe it was the assistant coach and goalie coach Johan Hedberg that just kind of calmed him down after game 4, tried to get back into the basics, get back to what he was doing. And since then, I mean, you just read it, 938, 983, 895 for game 7, 929, 903, 926. He's just found his way into becoming that goaltender that they need. And I think everybody came together after that game 4 loss and played game 5 like it was do or die, because I think they realize what kind of team they have and where they should be and where they can go. I mean, Jones had a great game that game 5 that really stabilized the team to do their thing. Game 6, I mean, my goodness, 58 saves is just phenomenal. That's a Sharks franchise record for most saves in a playoff game. Yeah, he had 34 stops in game 7, but he made those timely stops, and a lot of those stops were challenging, and they could have been, more deflating than it was already. But that's with this team, going back to, the forwards and the defense, it's coming together, it's helping each other out. And one of the things I notice in a championship caliber team, doing those little things, whether it's blocking shots or poke checks or, hitting a guy, when it's like, say, Joe Thornton or something like that, doing those little extra things for the good of their team is always phenomenal. And I think Jones was having a tough time kind of letting down the boys. And he had that huge game in game 5, then came up with that phenomenal game in game 6. And he's like, guys, I'm going to help out. You do your thing. I'll do mine. Let's go. And since then, absolutely unbelievable.
This leads me to my poll question for this week. I tweeted this out today, and it got over 100 votes. And I'm going to read you the 4 choices, but I won't tell you which choice is in the lead until you tell me which of the 4 you're choosing, okay? So with the Sharks just 2 wins away from the Western Conference Final, which is a sentence that I didn't think I would say when you were down 3-1, and then before the Vegas series started, I did not expect this sentence to be said, and yet here we are saying it right now. So with the Sharks just 2 wins away from the Western Conference Final, how do you think San Jose's season ends? The 4 choices are lose to the Avs in the second round, lose in the Western Conference Finals, lose in the Stanley Cup Final, or win the Stanley Cup. Which of the 4 options do you either think is going to happen? I mean, obviously you hope that they win the cup, but what do you think is the most likely option for the San Jose Sharks this season right now?
Well, I'll put my bias in and say they're going to win the whole thing. To me, be quite honest, I think they get it done. You look at who's out there left. And in the West, you have Dallas, who's been a formidable opponent against the Sharks. They've been tough. St. Louis, it's a different team from 3 years ago when these 2 teams met in the Western Conference Final. I mean, Binnington, talk about a beast of a goaltender as well. But I just think depth-wise, this team can get it done. I think they had a wake-up call in those first 4 games. I think that controversial call in game 2 on the goaltender interference call really got them off their game, along with allowing a goal, like in the first minute or so early on in the Vegas series. I think they found their groove. They found their confidence. And to me, I think winning the cup is their thing. I think this is finally the year.
Well, the poll responders seem to agree with you because 35% of the people that participated in the poll. Now, again, if you want to participate in the poll for yourself, go on Twitter. It's at Chel Squared. I put it out every week. If you want to tweet at the poll, respond to the poll, it is on Twitter at Chel Squared. 35% of the poll said the Sharks are going to win the cup. And this is probably one of the closest polls I've ever seen that I've put out that have had four choices. So 35% to win the cup, 26% to lose in the Western Conference Finals, 22% to lose to the Avs in the second round, and 17% of people have the Sharks losing in the cup final. So this is a pretty much neck and neck debate over where the Sharks are gonna end up, which is where you want to be considering how the big bad teams, right? The Lightning are out, the Flames are out, the Knights are out. You have the huge juggernauts, the favorites are out. So right now, it's pretty much anyone's game. I guess the one favorite still in play is Boston, but they're down 2-1 in their series right now. Game 4 is tonight. If there's any window of opportunity for a team that was the underdog throughout the year and still now to either make it or win it all, it is this season right here, right now. As I just said, all the biggest teams are out. Right now, it's a mad scramble to see who can pull this one out, because next season we probably won't see this again. We probably won't see all the top teams knocked out immediately in round one. We probably won't see that ever. Maybe not ever, but at least for quite a while, this won't happen. You won't see a 62-win team swept in the first round. You won't see Calgary losing in 5 games. You won't see that again. So if there's ever an opportunity for a team like San Jose or Colorado or Dallas or Carolina or Columbus or whichever team you want to pick, if there's ever an opportunity for one of these teams to win a cup and they aren't considered favorites at that time, it is right here, right now.
It's probably the most wide open conference semifinal round I've ever seen. I think myself and my co-host AJ Strong, we've talked about in the past. In 2006, the Sharks ended up being the top seed, and they were the number 5 seed because the top 4 seeds in the West were out, and that almost happened here. I mean, the Sharks, if you were to do the 1-8 format, are like the only top seed that advanced in the West, and then you see, Tampa go out in 4. I mean, who called that? I think I heard people say Tampa in 3 against Columbus.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, we thought maybe Toronto might step up, and I was kind of surprised they're let down in Game 7. You saw, freaking oh gosh, why can't I think of you saw the Caps go down in Game 7, and of course Justin Williams is going to be a part of that. I mean, come on. It's one of those things where anybody can get it. And for the Sharks, I think them and maybe Boston have the deepest roster in the remaining 8 teams. And I just see them getting it done. I mean, the optimism is really high out here. If they lose in the second round, it's going to be absolutely disappointing. And if the Sharks had gone out in the first round, it was going to be very dire. But ever since Game 5, and especially since Game 7, the optimism in Teal Town is just beyond the roof. And if they can pull it off tonight in the altitude, there's no excuse for them not getting to the Western Final.
What does San Jose have to do tonight at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, 7 Pacific, to get this victory? Obviously, Colorado is going to be out for blood. They're down 2-1 in the series. You have Nate McKinnon playing out of his mind. You have Landeskog playing out of his mind. You have Rantanen playing out of his mind. You have a lot of their top guys, as teams should be playing at the top of their game, playing very well. Also playing top minutes, I might add, at Mike Babcock, maybe you should play your top guys more minutes if you want to win hockey games. I went on a huge rant about that last episode. If you haven't listened to that episode, I very much recommend you go ahead and listen to that one, because I got heated. I'm not gonna lie. I got very heated at Mike Babcock for pretty much blowing the series, right? I'm not here to suggest that the Leafs would have won Game 7 if Matthews and Marner and those guys played more minutes, but I am very much of the opinion that at least it would have been a much closer game, and Toronto would have had more opportunities to score more goals than they did, because that Game 7 for Toronto was a disgrace. Anyway, if you wanna listen to the full rant and the full episode, check out last week's episode. Also, there's a clip of it I posted on Twitter at Chel Squared and on Facebook at Chel Squared. It's about 2 minutes and 20 seconds long. I condensed the rant, the unedited rant in the whole episode is about 6 minutes long. I condensed it to about 2:20 to fit it onto Twitter and on Facebook. That rant is on social media as well, so go check that out if you haven't, because I was angry. Super, super angry at Mike Babcock. He had no business playing his top guys that few minutes, and yet he did. And it continues to boggle my mind to this very day. May 2nd at around 5:30 p.m. We're recording just before the first game. Boston and Columbus play in about an hour and a half. And then obviously Colorado and San Jose play later as well. For San Jose, right, what do they have to do to ensure a Game 4 victory?
Contain those three guys, McKinnon, Rantanen, and Landeskog. But you also have to look at Tyson Barrie. Tyson Barrie's been a beast as well. Cale Makar, wow.
Yeah.
That kid is going to be something special. And oh, by the way, they have the 4th overall pick in this year's draft.
Right. Thanks, Ottawa.
Thanks, Ottawa. I'm glad that worked out for you. But getting back to like Toronto, I mean, to do my impression of Steve Dangle doing Mike Babcock, good players need to be good teams, and good teams need to be out there, and then good players need to make sure they're using their time management, and good stuff will happen. Yeah, well, guess what? Good stuff didn't happen. You went home and you looked probably more frustrating Leafs fans and Leafs players than anything else. But for the Sharks tonight, you got to contain those big players. You have to make sure you clog up the ice. I'm not going to say go full on neutral zone trap, but the one thing I looked at was McKinnon's first goal in Game 3. And he had plenty of ice to get revved up, and that's the last thing you need to do is get him revved up to give him some strength, and then just go, bar down to get them within one. He's staying in their passing lanes, and the Sharks have been really good about keeping the defensively minded in their own zone lately. But you also have to get your shots going. And my goodness, hello power play. I mean, let's not shoot your shot in just one bunch in Game 7. You need to get going here. And one of the things that I've always said is that if they're going to take dumb penalties, you need to make them pay. And 9 for 42 on the power play in the playoffs isn't going to cut it. You need to put some serious doubt into your opponent that, if I play illegally, I don't want to essentially give them a goal because I played dumb because I got my stick up high. So that's how I see it. I see playing smart, getting success on the power play, contain the ice, contain the top 3 of Colorado, and make sure that you get pucks on net and you get traffic in front. That's how you're going to do it.
Well, to your point, to the San Jose power play, right? The stat is 9 for 42, right? If I'm remembering that correctly. And if you take away the 4 power play goals against Vegas, that becomes 5 out of 38. And that's not good. You don't need me to tell you that. It's not a great stat at all. And obviously the Sharks were super hot in that 5 minutes, and they scored 4 goals, and it was awesome. But also Vegas completely imploded during those 5 minutes as well. But if you take away those 5 minutes, then the Sharks have been pretty abysmal on the power play in the postseason. And if they want to make it far, I mean, you kind of have to figure it out. You have the firepower to make it better. You have Couture and Pavelski and Thornton and Burns and Carlson and all these big names. You have the firepower to make this a dynamic and a terrifying power play to play against. And yet, if you take away those 5 minutes against Vegas, the power play overall has been real bad for the most part. So I definitely agree with you that the power play for San Jose needs to get it together, and they need to get it together sooner rather than later. Now, switching to the East for a second here, can we talk about Curtis McElhinney for a quick second here? I mean, this guy, journeyman, I think this is he's played on so many teams, I've lost count. This is a guy who has never started an NHL playoff game prior to last night, and he wasn't supposed to play at all. Then Mrazek in Game 2 got injured. McElhinney thrust into the situation, played well in Game 2, won that game, and then was thrown into Game 3 with Mrazek still out, still not able to play, and he got it done then. He played very well. The goals against him were not his fault at all. The first goal was tipped in. He had no shot. The second goal was a complete snipe and a half. I mean, if you are going to argue on social media and be like, oh, he should have stopped that shot, it was clean, he saw it coming. Okay, that was also such a snipe labeled for that top corner. It was a wicked wrist shot. And the old trope of, oh, he had no shot or whatever, it's obviously goalies have a shot on every chance. The likelihood of him stopping that shot was low to begin with. I mean, that was a perfect shot. But for McElhinney, and I said this earlier, I mean, he is the oldest goaltender to start his first NHL playoff game and win in NHL history. I mean, you talk about the career that this man has had, backup goalie for his entire career, and now he's thrust into this position at almost at age 36. This is not a young goaltender. And he comes out on top looking real good. And now the Carolina Hurricanes are one game away from sweeping the New York Islanders. Now, I pulled up this tidbit. I saw it thanks to Jim Matheson on Twitter for pointing this out. He said, according to NHL.com, if the Islanders lose tomorrow and the Canes sweep, it'll be the first time since 1993 a team swept their first-round opponent and then got swept themselves in the second round. The Sabres swept Boston, then got swept by Montreal the next series. So the Islanders right now are in super hot water thanks to some puck luck, sure. Won't argue that. The Hurricanes have had their fair share of puck luck this series. But overall, the Hurricanes, puck luck or whatever you wanna give the Hurricanes to their advantage, they're up 3-0 in this series. And they're one game away from sweeping and moving on to the Eastern Conference Finals, which is something that no one predicted. I didn't predict. I'm sure most people didn't predict this at all, and yet it is likely to happen. There's been 3-4 teams in the history of the league that have reverse swept. So it's not likely. I'm not saying it won't happen, but it's unlikely.
Thanks for the reminder of the reverse sweep. Ugh, God.
Sorry. I apologize for that, but it has to be said. Considering it's a 3-0 series lead, you have to bring it up. So I apologize.
No, that's totally fine. And the Islanders, and I believe it was 1975. They won. I believe it was their playoff debut. They were down 3-0 to come back and win, and they almost did it again the next round. It's possible, but I'm surprised for Carolina. I mean, there just seems to be something there. And I don't know what it is, but there's something about a rallying cry or a storm surge or getting the notoriety from Don Cherry. Hey, yeah, they're a bunch of jerks over there. I was like, what? Because they're having fun? I'm sorry. I mean, if Tomas Hertl was with the Hurricanes, my goodness, his tagline is "Fun must be always." I mean, the guy can't stop smiling. But anyways, they just seem to be rallying over this, and I've never, and it's just one of those phenomenal things just to see for Carolina. I mean, again, that's another team that's put it all together, that has been phenomenal. I mean, you look at Tara Vinen, you look at Slavin, you know, Justin Williams. Yeah, he's Mr. Game 7, but man, he's been a wonderful leader for a team that needed. But getting back to Curtis McElhinney, I mean, my goodness, this guy was with the Leafs at the beginning of training camp. They had to make a decision on which one they were going to let go, and sure enough, it's him. And looking at his stats, 9.57, save percentage in the 2 games he's played in the playoffs this year, but 9.12, 9.34 last year for the Leafs, 9.14 when he got moved from Columbus. I mean, for a backup, I think it's just like, okay, just go out and win a few games. But no, they've been phenomenal. And Mrazek, even though he's hurt, he's played well. And that's kind of like you always hear that if you have a hot goalie in the playoffs, you can go deep. And this is where one of those cases where Carolina can go deep. But for the Islanders, I know former Shark Thomas Greiss has kind of owned the Hurricanes. I'm surprised he hasn't gotten in there just yet. But man, it's make history or be history time. And I think, can the Islanders do it? That's a tough task. That's a really tough task to ask for, and I'm just not sold on it yet.
No. And we were watching them play in the first round, right? And they swept the Penguins, and it looked really good doing it. And it hasn't been Leonard's fault. He's played very well in this second round. You can't blame the goaltending. The second goal in Game 3, I mean, he went for the poke. Justin Falk threw it up, blocker side, it went in. He took a gamble, he lost. But if he won that gamble, then he would have looked fantastic doing it. So it's a 50-50 kind of thing. It didn't go his way, and the Hurricanes scored. And then for the third goal, he tried to play the puck, and it got knocked out of midair by Sebastian Aho. And then the Hurricanes scored top shelf. I mean, these are goals that you look at and you go, I mean, can it get any worse luck-wise for the Islanders? You take a look at the goals and how the goals have been scored for Carolina, at least for the majority of the goals that they've scored in this series. It's been one of those goals like the third goal last night. They knocked it out of midair, and it somehow bounced its way, and then it goes in, and then it's just, especially in the first goal that Teravainen scored in Game 3, right? The puck went to him, and he stopped it with his skate. He had one swipe at it, he missed, and he had a second swipe at it, and he scored just before Leonard could get over there, before the defense could get over there. Like, it was milliseconds before someone could have knocked that puck out of the crease. And you take a look at, I think it was when it was 2-1 or 2-2 or at a clutch time in Game 3, McElhinney with the toe save. And Eberle was kind of skating by because he didn't know where the puck was. And then by the time he realized and started knocking at the puck, well, then the whistle blew. I mean, these are luck plays that right now are going Carolina's way. Obviously, right, there's so many other aspects to this game that Carolina is either doing well in, and is because there's more of a reason that Carolina is winning besides luck, right? You can't just say, oh, well, they're just getting lucky, that's why they're winning games. That's part of it, but that can't be the whole picture that you are painting, either as an Islanders fan or as a fan of the game or as a Carolina hater or whatever it is that you are. It doesn't matter what it is, like who you are. Luck is playing a part of the story here, but Carolina's also playing very well, and you can't knock on that at all. And right now, they are one game away from sweeping the New York Islanders and making it to the Eastern Conference Finals, which is, again, not something that many people thought would be a sentence prior to the start of the 2019 playoffs. And yet here we are talking about it right now on May 2nd, 2019. It's wild. Now, the other matchup going on in the East right now, Columbus and Boston, their game 4 is tonight, as we mentioned. How about Bobrovsky? I mean, he was playing up and down the whole season. He was not looking good. He got benched for a game or two during the season as well by Tortorella. I mean, this was not a good look for the Vezina winning goaltender. And yet here we are talking about how he's stealing games for the Blue Jackets in round 2 of the 2019 Stanley Cup playoffs. I mean, the complete 180 he had from the regular season to the playoffs has been absolutely astounding, and it all stemmed from the second period onwards in game 1 of the Lightning Columbus series, right? He gave up 3 goals in the first period, and then after that moment, he has been almost unbeatable. He went, I don't know what kind of switch he flipped, where that switch is. I mean, how he's hiding it underneath his equipment. I don't know where that switch is, but he flipped it. And he is looking like the Vezina caliber goaltender that he has prior to this season.
It's kind of similar in the sense of Martin Jones, that the switch was off and then all of a sudden they turned it on. It was like the last week or so that they turned it on and finally clinched that playoff spot. I mean, my goodness, just think of the nightmare it would have been in Columbus. And now Sergei, and of course I have to do like Jay and Dan from TSN would say, Sergei Bobrovsky. It's just one of those things. Again, you talk about the hot goaltender. Bobrovsky has been phenomenal. And again, talk about a team that's kind of come together over time, especially I think like the last 2 weeks before the regular season ended. And it's like, guys, okay, let's wake up here. Let's kind of get it together. And next thing you know, I mean, like we said before, nobody picked Columbus outside of Ohio to win the series against historically one of the greatest winning teams in Tampa. Nobody had a chance. And then what happens? You know, they come up looking like serious contenders, and all their moves had started working their way. And my gosh, I mean, it's almost speechless a little bit. I mean, to sweep a President's Trophy team, and we've never seen that happen before. You know, we've had a couple of teams that lost in 5, but to come up huge as he has, and I'm trying to pull up the numbers, like 1.88 goals against average in 7 playoff games, .937 save percentage. I mean, that is just absolutely ridiculous right now to see. And it starts with the back end, and then you get great playing from Seth Jones and Werenski, and then you see Matt Duchene, and then just live off of the atmosphere at Nationwide Arena. You know, it's just something else.
It's wild, right? You know, we just talked about it, but to see the yin yang from the season that he had, and then the first period that he had against the Bolts, and then just throw all of that out the window and return to the Vezina caliber goaltender that he has been, that we know that he can be. It is I've rarely, if ever, seen such a almost miraculous change in a goaltender in, I mean, how long is an intermission? Like 18 minutes or so? I've rarely ever seen any player change that dramatically during the course of an intermission of a game. That truly almost never happens, especially in the playoffs. And for that to happen to the starting goaltender of a hockey team that is so, I mean, you know, this isn't breaking news or whatever, but they were huge underdogs. And for them to go out after that first period and say, you know, we can win this series, and did they ever, by sweeping that Tampa Bay team. And here they are leading the Boston Bruins, who are, I guess, judging by social media, the de facto favorites now to win the cup. I mean, there's a lot of people that are saying, okay, now that Tampa's out, Nashville's out, Winnipeg's out, Calgary's out, the Boston Bruins are now the favorites to win the cup. Well, Pastrnak hasn't been playing well. You got Backes that now back in the lineup for Game 4. You have Bergeron, who contributed to the OT goal from Columbus. He got sent to the box, and then Duchesne scored to tie the series up in Game 2. I mean, the top guys besides Brad Marchand, who besides punching people in the back of their heads,
oh gosh,
has shown up offensively sometimes. He's been one of their better players offensively. Probably, I mean, again, this is not breaking news here. The sky is blue, grass is green. Brad Marchand, please stop punching people in the back of their heads.
Or licking them.
Yes, or that. Very much appreciated. I can't believe that wasn't a suspension. Punching people in the back of their heads is illegal in contact sports, right? You can't do it in boxing. You can't do it in those kinds of sports. How is that not a suspension in playoffs? Can we figure it out here? Can we discuss this as hockey fans and figure out that, hey, maybe get Marchand out of that series, because you can't do that, and he clearly knows better than that, and yet he did it and he got away with it, which is wrong. It is the wrong decision, bar none. I don't care what team you're a fan of, who you support, who you don't support. I don't care. You can't be punching people in the back of their heads without them, one, knowing that you're there, knowing that you're there. Two, yeah, if it's banned in boxing and it's banned in those physical sports, you probably shouldn't do it in other sports either. And for that to not only be okay, but for them to not suspend Marchand for that is nothing short of a disgrace here. And the last series that we're going to talk about, because it's the last one remaining that we haven't talked about yet, is Dallas and St. Louis. Dallas in Game 4, I felt that they were the best in the entire series. This is the best that they've looked in the 4 games that they've played against St. Louis. They've looked as if they figured out the system. They figured out Jordan Binghamton. I will never be able to pronounce his name correctly. I'm sorry. I live in upstate New York, as I said in the beginning here. We've learned Binghamton. We've learned a lot of those cities, and it's Jordan Binghamton. I will one day get that right. Not today, but one day will. It looks like they've figured him out. And Game 4 went pretty smoothly in Dallas's favor. Now, Game 5, going back to St. Louis, of course, there was some chippiness. Now there's a lot of bad blood between these two teams. The game didn't go smoothly. The score did for Dallas, but in terms of the game, there was a lot of chippiness, a lot of this and that going on from both teams. And Game 5 back in St. Louis is going to be a game that you don't want to miss, because there's obviously this is pivotal, right? There's now a best of 3. You win 2 games, you move on. You lose 2 games, you're out of it. This is not breaking news here, but this is a pivotal game, more so for Dallas than for St. Louis, because in my opinion, and I feel like this is kind of the feeling from the majority of hockey fans, that St. Louis is the favorite here and Dallas is the underdog. And if Dallas could pull off Game 5, that would be huge, because then they go back to Dallas for Game 6, and they have the crowd behind them, they have the momentum behind them, they have a lot of things going on for them. If St. Louis wins Game 5, and they've shown that they could win in Dallas, they could come in and pretty well defeat the Stars and then move on to the Western Conference Finals in Game 6. The Stars have been looking good, and it's up to them. I feel like, obviously, every game is a must-win in the playoffs, but this Game 5 right now is so crucial to the success of the Dallas Stars that if they don't win, I'm going to say Blues in 6 here. But if they do win, then this changes everything for this matchup and for the rest of the Western Conference.
Yeah, it completely does. I mean, I think Dallas, we felt, was going to get a bit of a fight once they got past Nashville, but I thought with Bennington doing his thing, along with the Blues doing their thing, that Blues in five, maybe six, is what I was thinking. But Dallas has fought and clawed their way, especially at home, and and especially after Game Four. I mean, my goodness, to put up a four spot on the Blues beforehand, that's crazy. And to think just 4 months ago, we were talking about how the president of the Dallas Stars is calling them horse bleep,
Right,
that
right.
we're a stars driven league and our stars aren't getting it done.
Both teams were in the middle of just garbage. The Stars owner was talking trash. The Blues were dead last in the NHL. I mean, both these teams were dealing with a lot of stuff, and yet here they are.
Yeah, and just unexpected. Although I kind of expected the Blues to be in it at the beginning of the year. I thought they were going to be a great team, that they were waiting for that goaltending, and they found Bennington, and boom, it's just been phenomenal. But you look at what Ben Bishop's done for the Stars. He's solidified that net minding position. They aren't spending $10 million on two goaltenders that weren't getting it done in that time frame. In the past, Tyler Seguin, yeah, I think he's got like 6 points, but look at Radulov. Alex Radulov has been a great pickup, and I was a little iffy on him, but now he's been one of those force players. I mean, 5 goals, 4 assists. He leads the Stars in points. Jamie Benn with 7 assists. He's, like you mentioned before, he's the only forward in like the top 7, 8 in the league that has
Jamie Benn and Nathan McKinnon both lead all forwards with 7 assists. Everybody else is defensemen.
And speaking of defensemen, you have John Klingberg, you have Miro Heiskanen. The defense, again, we're talking about defensemen, been phenomenal for teams lately, and it's a huge thing for Dallas. It's, to me, this one's been a toss-up for this series. I thought at first St. Louis for sure, but once Dallas evened it up and it went back to Dallas, I thought, okay, this can go either way. This could go either way, and either team can advance, and it'll be a huge moment for them too, because like we said, St. Louis was at the bottom of the barrel. They made LA and Anaheim look good. Once they turned the calendar to 2019, boom, they went off. Dallas, mired in their star players struggling, to get called out, and that was embarrassment for the league and the organization.
Sure.
And they kind of challenged themselves, and look what they've done now. So, kudos to both of them. It's going to be tough for one of them to go out, but I just hope that, Game 5, Game 6, and hopefully Game 7 all go into quadruple overtime.
Well, if nothing else, it'll be great for whoever wins the Sharks and Avalanche series. Also, it'll be great for every other hockey fan on the planet besides Stars fans and besides Blues fans, because they'll all be dead from heart attacks by the end of that series. By the way, I mean, if you scroll through who leads the league in points in the postseason, Nate McKinnon has 12 points in 8 games, right? But you also take a look at the names underneath that. Mark Stone has had 12 points in 7 games with the Knights, and Pacioretty woke up seemingly after having an up and down regular season with the Knights, had 11 points in 7 games. Those trades worked out very well for Vegas, and I don't want to hear people complain about those trades, because they worked out very well for Vegas, at least right now anyway. Giving up Brandstrom, big deal for Ottawa, big deal for Vegas as well. And giving up Suzuki in the Pacioretty trade, another big deal. But they felt like these were players that can help them out right now. And right now they did help them out. They exceeded expectations. Mark Stone still tied for the league lead in points, right? And he hasn't played in about a week or so. You have Couture also. It's a 3-way tie for first place in points scored. You got Nate McKinnon, eight games played, 12 points. Mark Stone, 7 games played, 12 points. Logan Couture, 10 games played with 9 goals and 3 assists with 12 points as well. 9 goals, by the way, far and beyond the league leader with 9. The second leading scorer, it has 6. So Logan Couture far and away has 9, leading the league in that. And then there's a 3-way tie in goals. And you got Jaden Schwartz, Mark Stone, and also another Shark and Tomas Hertl. So there's a lot of names right now that are coming up that the Sharks either have to watch out for in terms of Rantanen and McKinnon, and they also have on their own team. So this is going to be a high-scoring affair, if not for Game 4, then at least for the rest of the series.
Yeah, I mean, for the Sharks, you have Couture, you have Hertl. Those two guys have been, phenomenal all postseason long. Then you kind of look at, you have Timo Meier, who's a freaking beast. He isn't at Nathan McKinnon level, but he's slowly getting there in just his 3rd season. He's up there. You have Kevin LeBanc, who single-handedly helped get that power play against Vegas in Game 7 going with a goal and 3 assists in that game. He's been up and down, but he's been on a roll. Marcus Sorensen has been a key piece as well, doing whatever it takes. You look at Gus Nyquist. He's been up and down, but he looks like this matchup against Colorado fits him more than it did against Vegas. So that's going to hit his stride. We haven't heard too much yet from Evander Kane, and you don't know about Joe Pavelski. So you have these little guys coming in. I mean, we mentioned Barclay Goodrow, Melker Karlsson. These guys have played very well. And then defensively, Vlasic's always been a huge defensive defenseman, on the blue line. He's played phenomenal work ever since the calendar year turned. He's been on a great run. Brendan Dillon, who's usually the partner with Erik Karlsson, he's had a standout year defensively. Granted, yes, he was mostly EK65's defense partner, but EK65 also missed a ton of time in the regular season, and he was still a strong piece for the Sharks throughout the year. So those guys that you don't hear from are also doing those little things that could make the Sharks a huge team to be afraid of down the rest of the way.
Erik Karlsson, by the way, is not 100% healthy. He's not 80% healthy. He's probably not 60% healthy. He is playing on one leg to begin with, and that one leg probably isn't healthy at all right now. He, at times, has not looked good defensively, but yet he has 10 assists in 10 games so far. And it really goes to show just how fantastic Erik Karlsson is at what he does. At least offensively, right? He's super hobbled, and he isn't making a lot of sensational defensive plays, which I don't want to excuse him for that, but because he's still, I guess, healthy enough to play. So if you're healthy enough to play, then you should be at least manageable on all 200 feet of the ice here. And he hasn't been great defensively, but offensively, second highest assist totals in the playoffs behind Jacob Slavin. By the way, Jacob Slavin, 25 years old, and we talked about this before the show, $5.3 million contract for the next 5 years after this season. I mean, he signed it when he was 23. Carolina knew he was going to be a stud right before he hit his stud stride, and it is paying off extreme dividends for the Carolina Hurricanes. That contract is a steal for Carolina, very team-friendly, and it's going to pay off barring season career-ending injury, which very much hope does not happen, right? If all goes well, which it should, and I hope it does, that contract is an absolute steal for the Carolina Hurricanes, And game 4, 2 game 4s tonight, Boston and Columbus, Colorado and San Jose tonight. Eric, give me your score predictions for both games. How do both games end?
Oh man. Shoot, the Columbus Boston one's going to be a tough one. Man, I'm going to say Columbus wins 3-2.
Who gets the game winner?
I will go with the bread man with the game winner with about 5 minutes
in regulation left. Or in overtime or like the 7th overtime, or when are we talking here?
I will go last 5 minutes because I want to see the Sharks game on time and not on NHL Network. Well, how's that? It's a funny thing with one of my co-hosts. We always laugh because we would always be on the back end of the doubleheader on NBCSN.
Sure.
And sure enough, the game would be scheduled for like 7:00, and there would still be 4 or 5 minutes left in the third period of the first game. So naturally, that'll happen tonight. and likely it'll be like, of course it goes into quintuple overtime in Columbus tonight, which it probably could, but I'm trying to keep the good positive vibes going and saying Columbus wins late, 3-2. As for the Sharks and Avalanche, man, the Avs are going to come out hungry. They know they need to have this game. They know that they can shake the Sharks a little bit if they can come out with this one. But I think after getting accustomed to altitude, getting accustomed to taking them down, and let's be honest, I mean, Mike Emmerich would have had a great time calling in this game because I don't know how many times we would have heard, hit the post with the shot.
If nothing else, Eric, your impressions have been absolutely incredible. If everything else equals 0, I'm here for your impressions. They are, I love these impressions.
Oh, thank you very much. How many times I've heard waffle boarded. It's one of those crazy things that you just stick to. But I mean, the Sharks had like 4 or 5 posts in game 3. I mean, it could have been 4-0 after one period. So I think they've finally have solved Grubauer, but I still think they are not going to go away. However, the Sharks are, and I'm going to kudos to Brody Brazil, who does our pregame shows on NBC Sports California. The Sharks are 37-0 when they allow 2 or fewer goals in a game this season, regular season and playoffs. I think that stays the same. I think the Sharks win 5-2, and it sets up for a crazy atmosphere Saturday night at the Tank.
You're not gonna like what I'm about to say. You're not gonna like it. But I think. Who scores the game winner and when? But before I get to my take here, who scores the game winner for San Jose and when do they do it?
I say early third period, and I'll go with Tomas Hertl.
All right. Can't argue with that. I'm gonna say Boston takes game 4. I'm gonna say Pastrnak finally wakes up from whatever slumber he's been in. I'm gonna say probably, you're not gonna like this either. Probably in overtime. Don't know when. I mean, who knows when? But maybe around 8 minutes or so into the first overtime, Pastrnak finds a seam and just trickles one past Bobrovsky. It's either going to be one of those where it just crosses the goal line, like Boston's goal in Game 3, or it's going to be an absolute clap bomb, and Bobrovsky's going to have 0 shot to stop. So either way, I think Boston with Pastrnak leading the way, probably a 3-2 or a 4-3 or one of those kinds of games, and in overtime Pastrnak scores the game winner. And after that, for Colorado and San Jose, you're not gonna like it, but I'm gonna say Colorado takes game 4, 4-2. The third goal probably scored by, I'm going to say, Landeskog, because McKinnon's too easy, Rantanen's too easy, or I could go completely out of left field. It's like Cale Makar is going to score the third goal of the game for Colorado because he's been an absolute stud, like you've said earlier. He's been terrific for Colorado. And Makar might score the third goal. Who knows? But I mean, I don't know. There's so many different things that could happen in this game. As everyone here knows, it's not basketball. And basketball is still very unpredictable in its own right. I mean, the Clippers got 2 against the Warriors, and no one thought that was going to happen, and yet it did. They also came out from 31 points down to win a game, which is wild to think about. But in terms of luck, hockey has more luck and more unpredictability than basketball has. So you take a look at Game 4 and you think, you're not going to like it, but Colorado, I think, is going to take Game 4, and both series are going to be tied at 2 after tonight's games.
I just hope we can crown you the mayor of Wrongville after tonight.
Well, I was wrong about Martin Jones. I was wrong about the first series that you had. I thought Vegas was going to sweep, and then you were down 3-1, and I thought, all right, well, Vegas is going to win Game 5. It's over. And then you won. So I was wrong about that.
To be honest, we were setting up for Game 5 to be our eulogy post-game show. And when the Sharks came out running, we was like, okay, wait a minute. They turned on the switch. And we thought, okay, they'll get Game 6. Because to Sharks in Game 6, it's like kind of like their kryptonite. And then they win that one. And it's like, okay, all bets are off. And then they go down 3-0. And then they get that call and just take advantage of it, and it was unbelievable. But you can be right. I mean, with these playoffs, I think more than anything is possible. I mean, you look at a team like St. Louis, who was down dead and out in January. Now they're 2 wins away from going to the conference final. You look at Dallas, who their president, as we said before, calls them out. Things weren't falling the right way. They weren't working out. They go on a run now. You look at Columbus, who was fighting for their playoff lives about a month and a half ago, and how they might fire their GM. They might fire Torts. They're going to lose Panarin and Bobrovsky. Now they're 2 wins away from going to the conference final for the first time ever. You look at Carolina, who was battling to get in with Columbus and Montreal, won a 7-game, and now they've taken advantage of their opportunity, and now they're going to probably close it out against the Islanders. You look at the Islanders, the Isles. Oh, they're going to suck because John Tavares isn't with the team. Well, guess what? John Tavares is watching the Islanders, in the second round. Anything is possible.
Yeah, no, definitely. And by the way, this episode is dedicated to Jason Botchford, the Vancouver Canucks reporter who died this week of a heart attack. And my thoughts and Eric's thoughts are with the family in this difficult time. And this episode is dedicated to him in his honor. I've never met Jason, but I've read his stuff and his terrific stuff, and the outpour that I've seen from former Canucks players and current players and other reporters, and the list goes on, has been absolutely terrific about him. And I hope that his family and his friends and his loved ones could recover from this major loss that has shook not only the hockey community, but obviously, more importantly, his family and his friends and everyone that he loved and respected. So this episode dedicated to Jason Botchford.
Yeah, Jason Botchford. I'm a huge listener to TSN 1040 up in Vancouver, and he was a key contributor up there. Loved it. Loved his coverage, and I believe he was the guy that opened up about the Joe Thornton comment about 4 goals and everything. So there's always a little memory there, but I just loved his writing. I loved his take on the Canucks and the NHL. So my heart goes out to his family and his colleagues.
Yeah, absolutely. Erik, this has been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure to have you on once again. As I said in the opening, I mean, I opened up Skype to give you a call, and then it said last talked 7 months ago. I mean, I saw that and I was like, has it really been that long since Erik has been on the show? this is a farce. This will never happen again. And if you are willing to come on more often, you are more than welcome to plug your social media, plug your stuff. I know you're a big deal over at Teal Town USA, so plug that and plug anything else you want to plug.
Oh, thank Andrew, as always. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and appreciate the kudos, and likewise, got to give you kudos for actually putting up with me for about an hour. That's crazy. So, for me, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at PuckGuy14, basically how you spell it. For me, I co-host and run TealTownUSA.com. You can find us on the Twitter and the Instagram under the same name, Teal Town USA. We do a live and interactive post-game show after every single Sharks game, home and away, regular season playoffs. Even if we find a feed for the preseason, we'll do that too. My co-hosts also do a weekly roundup, or in this case now round by round roundup for the Sharks. Basically, we started this because the lack of coverage in the Bay Area, and we've now surpassed almost 1,500 YouTube subscribers, over 3,000 Twitter followers, and we're shooting graphics. I'm doing edits. I turned Gerard Gallant in his fancy blue jacket, which coincidentally is the same color and the same jacket as the ushers at the Shark Tank. We turned that into one. That one went viral. And then gifting any critical play on our Twitter handle. And but of course, our big one, Teal Town After Dark, is what we do on the YouTube channel. So please subscribe to us there.
Awesome, Eric. As always, this has been awesome. And I hope that if you have time and you are willing to come on once again very soon.
Well, I appreciate it. And I'm always looking forward to conversing with you, Mr. Chelney.
Awesome. This has been episode 46 of Chel Squared. Episode 47 coming up next week. I'll talk to you then.